So what are ways that we can improve our gut microbiome? So I get asked a lot about prebiotics and probiotics. So prebiotics are non-digestible substances. They provide a beneficial physiologic effect by promoting the activity of a select number of favorable bacteria. Probiotics are, on the other hand, are the live microorganisms that confer a health benefit on the host. So when we consume prebiotics, which are in lots of the plant-based diet and foods, we are getting fiber. When we consume fiber, that is fermented by bacteria, and that produces short-chain fatty acids. And short-chain fatty acids are the key to a good, healthy gut microbiome. Probiotics bypass the prebiotic step and do help, but not as effectively. So research shows that plant-based diets result in increased short-chain fatty acids compared to animal-based diet. So like I said, short-chain fatty acids are really important. They help to keep that glue between the epithelial cells, to keep that very tight so that we don't get harmful pathogens in our blood. This was an article that looked at a microscopic level. What is happening to our GI tract if we have a fiber-rich diet like a plant-based diet? And let's compare that to what happens to our GI tract if we have a fiber-free diet, predominantly animal-based. So this here is the fiber-rich diet, and this is the epithelial barrier, and this is the mucus layer on top that serves as a protective barrier. And here are the pathogens and our gut microbes. And in a fiber-rich diet, you can see here these epithelial cells are very close. They're tight. We like that. It's not going to let harmful things pass through easily. It also has a thick mucus barrier to prevent, again, harmful things from coming through. That's great. When they looked at the fiber-rich, fiber-free diet, this is what they saw. You can see here these epithelial cells look weakened. They're not as tight here. This is what many people will refer to as leaky gut, right? They're not as tight. The mucous membrane is very thin, and it's allowing for a lot more of the harmful bacteria to enter our GI tract. So again, this is the difference between a plant-based diet and really the standard American diet, the SAD diet, which is a fiber-free diet. So this is based on the GI guidelines, the American College of Gastroenterology IBS guidelines published last year, and they talk about the role of fiber in IBS. Insoluble dietary fiber, wheat bran, whole grains, vegetables. This increases the fecal mass. It accelerates colonic transit, meaning it helps to move things through. This is very helpful for people who are constipated. Soluble fiber, things like psyllium, oat bran, beans. These are fermented by the large intestine, and these increase stool bulk. So these help for patients who have a lot of diarrhea. They also can help to produce short-chain fatty acids. What happens is that this fermentation process from the fiber decreases the pH, and it allows for the growth of beneficial bacteria. It also stimulates the release of serotonin. We talked about serotonin being that happy hormone. It allows the release of serotonin, and it improves visceral hypersensitivity, lowering pain threshold, lowering pain that people might experience with IBS. In a meta-analysis study, so a large study where they looked at 14 different randomized controlled trials, they looked at almost 1,000 patients. They showed that fiber supplementation helps IBS symptoms. So fiber is a great way to improve our gut microbiome and to improve symptoms in IBS. The best way to have fiber would be a whole food plant-based diet, or at least transitioning toward a diet where you are consuming more fiber. You're consuming more fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. I wanted to talk about probiotics because I get asked this a lot. In 2018, the probiotic market was huge. There was about $40 billion spent on probiotics. The market is expected to be worth nearly $50 billion by 2023. $50 billion. So any aisle you walk down, you just have to walk down an aisle in the supermarket, the grocery store, and you will see so many different types of probiotics. You will see lots of advertising for probiotics. What I want to counsel you on is that there is little information on the probiotic preparation, and they do not require FDA approval for marketing. So there are a few studies where research trials have been done: Visbiome, VSL3, Align, Floristore, Activia. But most of the probiotics on the market, research has not been done. And so we just don't know what exactly is in it. I want to give you the GI guidelines and what they recommend. They analyzed the data on probiotics and IBS, and they said that there was no significant improvement in symptoms in patients with IBS who took a probiotic. They also found that there was a lot of variability. There was a lot of selection bias. The research trials that were done were not as thorough as we like them to be. And based on this, the American Gastroenterology Association does not recommend the use of probiotics for most GI and digestive conditions. In symptomatic children and adults with irritable bowel syndrome, we recommend the use of probiotics only in the context of a clinical trial. No recommendations. There's a knowledge gap here. So, and we are definitely learning a lot about probiotics. And we are trying to understand which strains would be helpful, how much of each strain is helpful. As of now, we just don't have enough information. So I don't routinely recommend it for all patients. So again, what I do recommend is dietary changes. This was a Harvard study that looked at dietary intervention in the gut microbiome. They took patients and they had them either be on a really strict plant-based diet or on an omnivore diet where they predominantly ate animal-based products. They collected stool samples and they did gene sequencing. And again, what they found was that changes in the gut microbiome can be seen within 1 day of starting a diet. They also saw that when the study was finished and people went back to their normal habits and their normal eating pattern, that within just 2 days of going back to their normal diet, the bacterial composition changed again. So what this tells us is that if we want to make a change to our gut microbiome, we can. If we want to improve our gut microbiome by eating a variety of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, we can improve our gut microbiome. But this is a long-term plan. This is not a short-term plan. It's not something that we can do for 2 to 3 weeks and then go back to our old habits. It needs to be a constant, consistent change that we make in our lives, because our gut microbiome can change and be influenced drastically either way. So I want to also talk about fermentation. This is the process of converting carbohydrates to alcohol or organic acids. This is a process that uses microorganisms, yeast or bacteria, usually through the production of lactic acid bacteria. Fermentation has been used for thousands of years as a method to preserve food, dating back to 6000 BC. In fact, in 1908, the Nobel Prize in Medicine was won based on fermentation. They found that aging is caused by toxic gut bacteria and that the lactic acid bacteria could prolong longevity. Different examples of fermented food include sauerkraut, yogurt, kimchi, and kombucha. And so I do recommend increasing or incorporating fermented food into your diet. It is important that when you're doing this, that you don't take an excessive amount at once. Fermented food should be a small quantity. And if you're not used to taking fermented food, please start small and slow and then increase, because otherwise you can get gas and bloating. But I do recommend incorporating fermented foods. This was a study that was published in Cell last year, and they showed that the gut microbiome improved with high fiber diet and with a diet high in fermented foods. They found that high fiber diet changes the microbiome function and influences the immune response. They also found that fermented food diets increase microbiome diversity and it decreases inflammatory markers. So consuming both a diet high in fiber and fermented foods might be beneficial and potentially the best way to improve our gut microbiome. So this is just a cartoon. It says, I think we're at a crossroads, everyone. Do I start exercising and eating well, or do I just let myself go and embrace it while living blissfully meal to meal? The brain says, a long-term investment in your body will have a much greater payoff. Be smart about this. The heart says, love who you are, no matter what, and the rest will work itself out. This, I think, is the gut microbiome, the bacteria. Replenish the kookiness, or I will usher in a new era of darkness upon you all. That junk the heart said about loving your body or whatever. So really, this is a long-term solution. This is a lifestyle. Be kind to your body. This is not a diet or a short-term fad. Perfection is not necessary. It is more important to be consistent. If you're consistent and you fall off for a while, that's okay. Don't be so harsh on yourself. What about the low FODMAP diet? So FODMAPs are fermentable oligodimonosaccharides and polyols. They are poorly absorbed in the small intestine. They're osmotically active, and they increase water delivery to the colon. They are rapidly fermented by colonic microbiota, resulting in gas production and colonic distension. So the low FODMAP diet is a potential short-term solution for patients with IBS. Now, you're not going to be able to read the charts that I have put on the right side here, but it's just to show you that there is information available that would show you what foods are allowed on a low FODMAP diet and what foods you should really try to eliminate on a low FODMAP diet. For people who are familiar with this, or if you look this up later, it can be a very restrictive and challenging diet. There are lots of things on the elimination aspect. There's lots of fruits, there's lots of vegetables, legumes that you need to eliminate. So it can be very restrictive. Please always talk to a dietitian and your doctor when you're thinking about the low FODMAP diet.